Elena Marquez never thought she would sell 9 months of her life to a stranger. But when her mother lay in a hospital bed, buried under mounting bills and suffocating despair, she had no choice. Jonathan Kane, the cold billionaire of Chicago, offered only one contract, a child, in exchange for her mother's life. But neither of them expected that child would shatter the icy walls around Jonathan's heart, and that love, something both had once dismissed as either a luxury or a lie, would take root amid the pain, slowly becoming their greatest strength. This is not just the story of a contract. This is a journey from despair to hope, ruthless power to tender love, darkness to eternal dawn. The autumn rain poured down over Chicago, as if the sky wanted to wash the entire city clean. Water streamed across the sidewalks, mixing with trash and the flickering neon reflections of billboard lights. People rushed to shelter under cafe awnings and convenience store roofs, but Elena Marquez stood frozen by the bus stop, clutching the soaked bundle of medical records in her arms. The bill from Northwestern Memorial Hospital was wet, the ink smudged, yet the numbers stood out sharp and cruel, etched into her memory like knife cuts. $187,490, $2. That was the estimated cost of the new treatment, the doctor insisted, and it was her mother's only chance at survival. To Elena, that number felt no different from a death sentence. Her job as a gallery assistant at the city's Art Institute had ended nearly a year ago, after budget cuts following the pandemic. Savings were gone, student loans still hung over her, and now the hospital demanded an enormous upfront payment before beginning her mother's chemotherapy. The cold seeped through her thin coat, but couldn't numb the feeling inside shame and helplessness, heavy and suffocating. She was 28 and well-educated. She had once dreamed of becoming an art conservator, yet here she was, unable to scrape together enough for her mother's next dose of painkillers. Just then, her old phone vibrated in her pocket, a strange number. Miss Marquez? A woman's voice, precise, devoid of emotion. Yes, this is she. This is Rachel Kim, executive assistant to Mr. Jonathan Kane. Mr. Kane would like to meet you. This afternoon, at Kane Global Holdings headquarters, 401 North Michigan Avenue. Elena froze for a few seconds. That name Jonathan Kane wasn't unfamiliar to anyone in Chicago. He was the face of financial power, a young tycoon, infamous for his icy demeanor, who had bought out and transformed countless old industries into a global empire. People called him the Ice King of the Magnificent Mile. He wants to meet me. About what? Mr. Kane will explain directly. 4 o'clock sharp. The call ended before Elena could ask another question. She glanced at her watch. 10 minutes to 3. If she caught the 147 bus, she'd make it downtown in time. Her hands tightened around the damp files, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Part of her screamed not to go. Men like Jonathan Kane didn't summon destitute women to their offices unless there was a hidden agenda. But then, the image of her mother curled weakly in the cold hospital bed surfaced, tired eyes still forcing a reassuring smile. Elena knew she no longer had the luxury of choice. The Kane Global Holdings Tower rose into the rain like a massive steel spear, stabbing the gray sky. Outside, giant LED screens streamed endless financial news, while inside was an entirely different world. Polished white marble floors, soaring ceilings, and gleaming abstract steel sculptures in the corners. It felt less like an office than a museum of power. Elena stepped in, her shoes soaked through. The receptionist scanned her up and down with a chilly glance before handing her a temporary visitor's badge. She passed through security. Each beep of the scanner hammered home her sense of being an intruder in a world she didn't belong to. The elevator carried her to the 60th floor. When the doors opened, a long gray-carpeted hallway stretched ahead, ending at glass doors engraved with gold letters. Office of Jonathan Kane, CEO. Rachel Kim was already waiting, her expression calm, hair neatly pinned, fitted black suit sharp as armor. Miss Marquez, please come in. Elena swallowed hard and stepped inside. The office was vast enough to fit an entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the rain-soaked Chicago skyline. Crowded traffic, the shimmering river. The furnishings were minimalist, yet luxurious. A massive walnut desk, Italian leather chairs, and a Rothko abstract painting on the wall. And behind the desk stood Jonathan Kane. He was tall and broad-shouldered, and his charcoal suit was tailored perfectly, as if it were crafted to exist only on him. His face was all sharp planes, with a straight nose and eyes of steel grey, so piercing Elena felt as if they could dissect her veins. At 35, he radiated absolute authority and a ruthless coldness. Elena Marquez. His voice was low, smooth, yet cold as steel. "Thank you for coming. Sit." She sat down, clutching the files in her lap. "You wanted to see me. About what?" Jonathan folded his arms, his gaze unwavering. "Rachel has informed me of your financial situation, the hospital bills, the mortgaged apartment, the unstable employment." Elena stiffened. She told you? I make it a habit to know everything before making a decision, and I have a proposal for you." He opened a desk drawer, pulled out a leather case, and set it on the desk. Inside was a thick stack of papers and a gleaming Mont Blanc pen. "This is a contract. You will receive $5 million if you agree to bear my child. After the birth, the child is entirely mine. You disappear. No ties, no rights, no claims." Elena stared at the stack of papers, her heart slamming in her chest. She thought she must have misheard. "You? What did you just say?" "You heard me clearly. I require a woman who is healthy, intelligent, and physically suitable to bear my child. The doctors have confirmed you are a perfect candidate, and you need money. Desperately. You think I'm what? A breeding machine?" Elena shot to her feet, her voice shaking but burning with fury. Jonathan didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on her. "I think you are a realist. A woman who knows her mother will die without money, and I'm offering you a chance." Elena was speechless. In that instant, she saw the naked truth. Standing before her was not just a man, but an entire system. A world where the rich could buy human lives, and the poor could only sell themselves in exchange for the survival of their loved ones. The silence in the office was heavy, broken only by the relentless drumming of rain outside. Jonathan tilted his head, his eyes flashing with a sharp challenge. "Decide, Miss Marquez. I don't make a habit of waiting." Elena looked down at her trembling hands, then saw again her mother's gaunt face in the hospital bed. A burning tear slid down her cheek. She reached for the pen. Each stroke of ink felt like it carved into her soul. When the name Elena Marquez appeared on the page, she knew her life had turned onto a path from which there was no return. Jonathan Kane closed the contract, a flicker of cold satisfaction in his eyes. "Welcome to my gilded cage, Miss Marquez." Outside, thunder cracked the sky, and the Chicago storm roared into the night. The apartment sat on the 82nd floor of Kane Tower. People called it a penthouse, but it felt more like a fortress in the clouds to Elena. The moment the elevator doors opened, she was stunned by the sheer vastness of the space big enough to rival a stadium. Glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing Chicago glowing beneath the night sky, the distant lights of Michigan Avenue Bridge, the Chicago River shimmering in silver below. Every piece of furniture bore a name she had only ever seen in magazines. Smoky leather Italian sofas, hand-woven Persian rugs, a white grand piano beside the window. A slender blonde woman appeared almost immediately. She wasn't dressed in a uniform, but in a minimalist, expensive dress. Her voice was gentle yet tinged with professionalism. "Good evening, Miss Marquez. I'm Madison, Mr. Kane's house manager. From today, I'll oversee all aspects of your daily life." Elena gave a slight nod, her throat tight. She no longer felt like a free person, but like a component inside someone's meticulously designed plan. Madison guided her down long, carpeted corridors. The silence was eerie, broken only by the faint clicks of heels against the floor. "This will be your room." Madison opened a door. "Mr. Kane wants you to have complete rest. Every need from nutrition and medical care to recreation will be handled." The room was nearly 3 times the size of the apartment Elena had once shared with her mother. A king-sized bed covered in crisp white sheets, a balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, and closets already filled with brand-new dresses tailored exactly to her size. She pulled open a drawer. Expensive lace lingerie, tags still attached. A chill ran down her spine. She hadn't bought them, hadn't chosen them. Surely Jonathan had arranged everything in advance. Madison seemed to read her thoughts. Mr. Kane has a habit of preparing everything beforehand. You only need to focus on your health. That evening, Jonathan appeared. He had traded his business suit for a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, top buttons undone. Sitting across from Elena at the long dining table, the warm golden light sharpened the harsh angles of his face, his steel-grey eyes unblinking. "I hope you're satisfied with your new home." Elena swallowed the bite of salad. Madison had served her. "It feels too foreign to me." Jonathan shrugged, his movements slow, like a predator that never rushed. "You'll get used to it. This is the safest place for you and the baby. You don't have to worry about anything. Private obstetrician, nutritionist, prenatal yoga trainer. Everything is in place. You talk as if I were a project." "Not as if. You are my most important project." Elena froze. In his eyes, she was nothing more than an investment. She set down her utensils and looked him directly in the eye. "Have you ever considered that this child will need a mother, not just a contract?" For a fleeting second, his face hardened. Something flickered in those cold eyes, pain, anger, but it vanished quickly. "You signed the contract. After the birth, you'll disappear. Don't expect anything else." The table sank into heavy silence. Outside, rain began to fall again. Elena's life was locked into a meticulously calculated rhythm in the following days. 6 a.m. Private doctor checked her blood pressure and heart rate. 7 a.m. Madison presented a pre-designed breakfast plan, freshly squeezed orange juice, organic oats, and DHA supplements. Then came light yoga, then mandatory rest. Elena, who once lived freely, staying up late at her easel, wandering through small galleries, was now reduced to a body under 24/7 surveillance. Her personal phone was confiscated. The new laptop she was given had restricted access. Everything ran through Kane Global servers. Leaving the apartment required 24-hour advance permission. She called it the Gilded Cage. Luxurious, safe, but still a cage. One afternoon, Elena slipped into the library. Thousands of books lined the shelves, from economics to classic literature. She pulled one at random and sank into a chair, but only minutes passed before Jonathan appeared. He looked at her as if he'd caught an intruder. "What are you doing?" "Reading." "Is there a rule against that, too?" He was silent for a moment, then walked closer. He bent down and took the book from her hands. The Myth of Sisyphus, by Albert Camus. An interesting choice, about the absurdity of life. Do you find it similar to your situation? Of course. A man condemned to push a boulder up a mountain, again and again, never escaping. Elena met his gaze. "Don't you think I'm trapped in that same loop?" Jonathan faltered. His eyes lost their icy sharpness for a fleeting instant, clouded with something darker and heavier. Then he set the book back on the shelf. "Don't dwell on philosophy. Focus on your task." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She wandered out to the balcony, staring at the endless city below. The cold wind off Lake Michigan whipped through her hair. Inside, Jonathan appeared, too, holding a glass of red wine. He stood beside her, silent for a long time. "You think I'm a monster, don't you?" Elena was startled by the unexpected question. "Do you even care what I think?" He kept his eyes on the distant lights. 15 years ago, I drove through a storm. I lost control. My parents died instantly. I survived. Since then, I've learned to kill every emotion, because emotions made me weak, and weakness killed the people I loved. Elena stood still. For the first time, she saw a crack in the frozen wall. "Maybe you're wrong," she whispered. "It wasn't emotion that killed them. It was an accident. But this way you're living, you're killing yourself." Jonathan turned to her, eyes burning with both fury and pain. "Don't try to save me, Elena. I don't need saving." In the weeks that followed, their relationship stretched taut like a bowstring. Jonathan was the man who dictated her every meal and every hour of rest, and the man who appeared unexpectedly when morning sickness left her heaving, handing her a cup of ginger tea. Elena despised him as her jailer, yet found herself watching him spend hours reading medical journals to ensure her pregnancy was safe. One morning, she saw him enter the kitchen, sleeves rolled, cooking eggs himself, the dish his mother once made for him. For a brief moment, his face softened into a hesitant smile, so fragile it made her chest tighten. But just as quickly, the wall of ice returned. His voice was cold again. "Eat. The doctor says morning protein is necessary." Elena understood then. Inside Jonathan, two men were at war, a ruthless tycoon and a broken son, still secretly yearning for love. And she didn't know whether she should run or stay and witness the struggle to the end. That morning, Elena sat slumped on the bathroom floor, arms wrapped around her stomach, breath ragged. The nausea surged again like a hidden wave, fiercer than before. She had tried to stay silent, not wanting to call anyone, but her body betrayed her, throat burning, eyes brimming with tears. A knock sounded. "Elena?" Jonathan's voice hoarse, strained with tension. Before she could answer, the door burst open. Jonathan rushed in, stripped of his usual icy composure. He knelt beside her, his large hand steadying her shoulder to keep her from collapsing. "How long has this been happening?" 3 days, Elena whispered. Doctor said, "It's normal." Jonathan's jaw clenched, his steel-grey eyes flashing with something that looked alarmingly like fear. He shot to his feet, opened the cabinet, rummaged for an electrolyte bottle, then returned to help her sit up. "Drink this. You're dehydrating." Elena looked at him. His face wasn't a frozen wall anymore, it was the face of a man panicking because he couldn't control what was happening. She sipped, the burn in her throat easing slightly. Jonathan sat beside her, silent for a long while. Finally, he exhaled. "I read the medical journals all night. It's called hyperemesis gravidarum. Severe cases need IV fluids. I'll call Dr. Greenberg immediately." Elena stared at him, astonished. "You stayed up all night?" He didn't answer directly. He averted his gaze, murmuring, "I won't accept any risk. Not for the baby, not for you." An hour later, Dr. Greenberg arrived with a nurse. They set up IV fluids, drew blood, and reassured Elena. Jonathan stood nearby, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes locked on every number flashing across the monitor. When the doctor finally said, "Stable, nothing dangerous," his shoulders eased. Even after the nurse left, Jonathan remained. He didn't speak, just took a warm towel and gently wiped the sweat from Elena's forehead. Her body trembled, from exhaustion and from something more profound. In that fragile moment, the space between them seemed to shrink. "Thank you," she whispered. Jonathan paused, his eyes meeting hers. Something soft flickered there for a heartbeat, fragile, tender, like a candle guttering in the wind. "Don't mistake this," he said lowly. "I'm just protecting my investment." But his voice lacked conviction, and Elena knew. He was lying to himself. From that day, the rhythm of life shifted. Jonathan began joining her for breakfast more often. No longer just a silent figure across the table, but a man who listened even if only in short exchanges. One morning, Elena dared to ask, "Why don't you let someone else cook? Why insist on making eggs yourself?" Jonathan froze, fork suspended in midair. Slowly, he answered, "My mother used to. She believed that, when someone is unwell, a meal is how you say, 'I'm here.'" Elena was stunned. For the first time, he spoke of his mother not as a tragic ghost, but with tenderness. Another morning, she entered the library and found him surrounded by books on pregnancy, what to expect when you're expecting, prenatal nutrition essentials, and even specialized medical journals. Elena chuckled. "Planning to become a doctor now?" Jonathan looked up, a rare flicker of embarrassment in his eyes. "I don't like surprises. I need to know every risk and complication so I don't repeat mistakes." Elena raised an eyebrow. "What mistakes?" He was silent for a long time before answering softly. "Driving that night. I thought I was in control. I was wrong." The air went heavy. Elena sat opposite him. "You can't live forever in that moment. You've punished yourself long enough. Jonathan gave a hollow smile. Maybe, but I don't know any other way. Day by day, Elena realized his care was no longer just an obligation. He noticed every small detail. He adjusted her schedule if she frowned with fatigue. The kitchen overflowed with imported fruit the next morning if she craved mango. When she fretted about weight gain, he actually smiled rare, genuine. You're creating life. Don't ever apologize for that. The way he said it made her heart tremble. Yet after every moment of softness, he rebuilt the wall. Each time, he reminded her, remember, this is still a contract. When the baby is born, you will leave. Elena understood he was afraid to open his heart, scared to lose again. That evening, they attended a charity gala for the children's hospital. Elena, her belly beginning to show, wore a deep blue gown chosen by Madison. Jonathan appeared in a tuxedo, the image of an ice prince. She hesitated when he extended his hand and placed hers in his. Flashes exploded, whispers rippled through Chicago high society. Jonathan's grip tightened around hers. When a blonde woman, Victoria Langford, approached with a razor-sharp smile, Elena shivered. But Jonathan pulled her closer, his voice firm. This is Elena Marquez, the most important woman in my life. Elena's breath caught. Those weren't the words of a contract. They were a declaration, public and unflinching. For the first time, she felt safe. That night, on the hotel balcony, rain fell lightly. Jonathan stood close, his breath warm against the chill air. I should have kept you far from my world, he murmured. But I can't. Elena looked into his eyes, seeing the fractures widening in the ice. Maybe you don't have to anymore, she whispered. Because sometimes we are each other's seeds of change. Jonathan said nothing. Then, slowly, he leaned down. The kiss brushed soft and trembling like a confession neither dared to name. Violin music drifted through the grand hall of the Drake Hotel, crystal chandeliers scattering light like thousands of broken mirrors suspended in the air. The annual Chicago Children's Hospital Gala gathered everyone necessary in the city. Elegant tuxedos, glittering gowns, painted smiles, a stage play beneath the chandeliers. Elena drew a deep breath. Her belly was already showing at 3 months, but the midnight blue gown Rachel Kim had chosen concealed it well enough. Jonathan stood tall beside her, cold and unshakable, as if nothing could disturb him. Stay close, he murmured, his hand resting on her elbow. Tonight there will be many eyes and not all of them kind. Elena nodded, throat tightening. He was right. She, a Latina woman, daughter of a housemaid, drowning in hospital debts, did not belong here. In this room of diamonds and champagne, she was an intruder. They hadn't even reached their table when a voice floated over, smooth as silk, sharp as a blade. Jonathan, darling, it's been too long. Victoria Langford. She swept in wearing a blazing red gown, shoulders bare, radiating the confidence of someone accustomed to conquest. Her golden hair coiled high, her smile a weapon. Victoria. Jonathan's tone dropped low, and Elena felt his hand tighten around hers, a rare sign of strain. Victoria's gaze sliced to Elena. So this is the special one? I've heard such delightful rumors. Elena smiled politely, steadying herself. Elena Marquez. A pleasure. Victoria didn't offer her hand, only tilted her head, smirk curling. Oh, pleasure for whom, I wonder? The air thickened, brittle as glass. Jonathan stepped half a pace forward, blocking Victoria's scrutiny. That's enough, Victoria. She shrugged, but her eyes clung to Elena. It's just, Jonathan bores easily. He once promised me the world. In the end, it was all a game. Have you prepared yourself for when he leaves you, too? Whispers rustled through the crowd. Elena caught the sting of stifled laughter, the weight of pity, the burn of disdain. Her pulse raced, blood rising hot in her cheeks. Before she could reply, Jonathan's voice cut through the air, low but resonant enough to silence the hall. Elena is not a game. She is the only one who reminds me I'm still human. The room froze. Victoria blinked, thrown off balance, then laughed, crisp and hollow. Oh, how romantic. But tell me, does she know the whole truth, Jonathan? Or do you still hide behind your frozen mask? After the gala, they left in silence. Outside, rain hammered the streets, Chicago glowing red under the storm. Inside the car, Jonathan's hands gripped the wheel, veins straining. Elena watched him, her voice trembling. "You were with her?" He closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "Years ago. It wasn't love. Only another arrangement. Like ours." Elena's stomach knotted like ours. The words cut like shards of glass. "So I'm just another repetition?" "No." Jonathan turned, eyes sharp as a blade. "Elena, you're different." He faltered, unable to force the word out. She looked away, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The rain lashed the glass, as if the whole city wept for her. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Who is Elena Marquez, the mystery woman beside Jonathan Kane? Kane global heir expecting a child. Charity gala shocker. From maid's daughter to society's Cinderella or billion-dollar contract. Eleanor sat in her room, throat tight, reading every line. They dug through her past, her father's debts, her mother's work as a housemaid, her unfinished scholarships, every flaw, every weakness laid bare. Jonathan entered, a crumpled newspaper in hand. "Ignore it. Don't read." "Ignore it?" Elena shot up, voice cracking. "They're calling me a whore. Jonathan, they're saying my baby is just a tool to trap a billionaire. Do you think I can ignore that?" He froze. For the first time, she saw not ice in his eyes, but helplessness. "I'll silence them. I have the power." Elena let out a bitter laugh. "Your power only proves their point, that I'm some opportunist clinging to you. I don't need you to silence them. Please believe in me. To stand up, publicly." Jonathan opened his mouth, then shut it again. No promise came, and in that instant, Elena understood. Between them still stood a wall of secrets and fear. Weeks later, the worst news arrived. Her mother's condition had relapsed. She was back in the hospital. Elena wanted to go at once, but under Jonathan's orders, Madison said it was unsafe. "She's my mother," Elena shouted. Jonathan appeared, voice steel. "You cannot risk this. Any stress endangers the pregnancy." "What am I then? A womb in a cage?" Elena's voice was torn raw. "Do you ever think I'm also a daughter? A woman? A future mother?" Jonathan's jaw locked, a storm raging in his eyes. But he did not answer. Eleanor stared at him one last time and turned away. Inside her chest, her heart shattered like a mirror reflecting everything, but never whole again. Winds off Lake Michigan howled that night. Rain lashed against the penthouse windows, rattling them with a ceaseless roar, as though nature had joined the rebellion inside Elena's heart. She sat on the bed, arms wrapped around her belly. The cramps had begun that afternoon light at first, then more frequent, sharper. She tried to reassure herself the doctor had said early contractions were sometimes regular, but when a dark red stain spread along her thigh, her chest clenched. "No, no, please no." Stumbling into the hall, she found Jonathan in his office, the glow of his laptop screen sharpening the tension in his face. "Elena," his head snapped up, steel-grey eyes flashing with alarm at the sight of blood soaking her dress. "Save my baby." The laptop crashed onto the desk as Jonathan lunged to her side. "Rachel! The car now. Northwestern Hospital." The rest blurred into fragments. Sirens are tearing through the storm. Rain is hammering the windshield. Jonathan cradled her against him, his hands stained with blood, but never letting go. "Don't leave me, Elena. Don't leave our child." His voice broke, trembling like that of a frightened boy. The hospital blazed with light against the storm. Emergency doors flew open, and nurses rushed the gurney forward. Dr. Greenberg appeared, voice firm. "Threatened miscarriage. We need to act immediately." Jonathan tried to follow, but a nurse blocked him. "You have to wait outside." He froze as the doors slammed shut, locking him alone in the sterile white corridor. For the first time in years, Jonathan was powerless. No money, contract, or market figure could save Elena now. He paced like a caged animal, raking his hands through his hair, eyes bloodshot. In his mind, the past replayed the rain, the spinning car, headlights exploding, glass shattering, then silence. His parents are dead, and he is alive. Since then, he had believed emotions were betrayal, but looking down at the blood on his sleeves, he understood the truth. Not loving was the real death. The doors burst open. Dr. Greenberg emerged, sweat on his brow. They're stable, both mother and child. But she needs strict rest, no stress. Jonathan nearly collapsed. He nodded frantically, then rushed inside. Elena lay pale on the bed, eyelids fluttering open. "The baby?" Her whisper cracked. Jonathan gripped her hand. "Still here. You're both safe." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she smiled weakly. "Thank God." He sat by her, trembling fingers brushing sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. He drew a ragged breath, then whispered, "Elena, I can't lose you. I can't." Her dark eyes searched his. "Why?" "I'm just a contract. Remember?" Silence stretched, broken only by the monitor's steady beeps. Jonathan bowed his head, voice breaking apart. "No, not anymore. I lied to myself. I love you. I love both of you." Elena choked back a sob. Her heart, long hardened with doubt and resentment, melted at last. She lifted a trembling hand to his cheek. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do." His eyes burned with truth. "I buried my feelings for 15 years. I don't care what the world thinks. I only know this: if I lost you, I'd die all over again." Elena wept, but this time with relief. It felt as if the storm outside had finally found its refuge. The days that followed, Jonathan barely left the hospital. He slept in the chair by Elena's bed, ate whatever was handed to him, and handled business by phone. But his eyes never left the monitor tracking her heartbeat. Nurses whispered among themselves. Never had they seen the ruthless billionaire look so fragile. One night, Elena woke to see him scribbling in a notebook. Her voice was soft. "What are you writing?" He looked up, startled, then handed it to her. Pages filled with meticulous notes, nutrition guidelines, exercise schedules, reminders. "Don't let her feel stress. Always tell her she's strong. Never forget she's not just carrying my child. She's Elena." Her tears blurred the words. For the first time, she believed behind the steel wall, Jonathan had a heart that trembled with love. Jonathan didn't take her back to the penthouse when the doctors finally discharged her. Instead, he drove out to the suburbs, stopping at a wooden house by the lake. "This place?" Elena asked softly. "My family's old home. I haven't returned since the accident." Jonathan opened the door, fear and resolve mingling in his eyes. "But I want you to be the first I bring here. If we begin again, it has to be from the deepest wound." Inside, time still lingered. Family photos on the wall, a dusty piano, a scratched wooden table. Jonathan stood motionless, hand trembling as he touched a picture of his parents. "It's time I stopped running," he said, turning to her. "If you'll have me, I want us to try living as a family. No contracts, no conditions." Elena's throat tightened. In his words, everything she had longed for to be seen, cherished, recognized as more than a vessel, was now before her. Tears glimmered as she nodded. "Let's try. For the baby. For us." Jonathan stepped forward and wrapped her in his arms. Outside, the storm had passed. Above them, the sky stretched clear, stars shimmering over the calm lake. The wooden house by the lake became their temporary refuge. In the mornings, sunlight slipped through the curtains, casting pale gold across Elena's tired face. Somewhere, birds sang, and the faint aroma of coffee drifted from the kitchen. She sat up, her hand resting on her belly, feeling the tiny heartbeat. Since the near miscarriage, every flutter from the baby filled her with both fear and gratitude. Jonathan was in the kitchen, white shirt, sleeves rolled high, his tall frame bent with surprising care as he whisked eggs, sliced bread, and set out a plate of ripe golden mangoes. "You're cooking for me?" Elena asked, startled. Jonathan looked up, a shy smile tugging at his lips. "My mother believed breakfast was the most important meal. I think she was right." Elena sat down, watching him. In the morning light, his grey eyes softened. No longer steel, but something fragile, human. "Thank you," she whispered. Days slipped into a rhythm that felt almost like family. Jonathan worked remotely, sometimes stepping onto the balcony for tense calls. Elena read and sketched half-finished drawings. In the afternoons, they strolled along the lakeshore. Jonathan always matched her pace, never rushing. Sometimes he bent, hand pressed to her belly, feeling the baby's tiny kicks. "One day, it'll run around the house, ruining my Zoom calls," he said with a rare hint of humor. Elena laughed, the sound scattering on the wind. She felt alive for the first time in months, not merely surviving. One evening, Jonathan handed her a small wooden box. "This belonged to my mother." Inside lay an old leather journal and a handful of family photos. On the first page, handwritten words, "Always remember, love is stronger than any mistake." Elena turned the pages. Notes on meals, holidays, little family stories. The handwriting was shaky but warm. "How long have you kept this?" she asked. 15 years. I never dared to reread it." His voice grew quiet as he stared out the window. "But if we're truly starting over, it has to be with the truth. This is part of me." Elena squeezed his hand. "Then I'll keep this secret with you and help you write new pages." Jonathan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. His eyes softened, like a dawn trembling at the horizon. But their fragile happiness didn't last. Rachel Kim arrived from the city one afternoon, her face drawn tight. She carried a stack of newspapers and an iPad. "Mr. Kane, the media's exploding. Hunter Brooks has released a series of stories about Miss Marquez." Jonathan frowned, snatching up a paper. Across the front page, bold letters screamed, "Jonathan Kane duped, his new lover just a gold digger." Beneath was Elena's photo at the gala, alongside financial records, her mother's work as a maid, unpaid student loans, and the mortgaged apartment. Elena froze, hands trembling as she took it. Everything she had tried to bury now lay bare, twisted into evidence of greed. "No." Her breath hitched. "They've turned me into a joke." Jonathan crushed the paper in his fist, fury blazing in his eyes. "Hunter, he'll pay for this." Rachel cut in. "Shareholders are panicking. Kane Global stock dropped 8% this morning. They want you to go public, deny the relationship, end the rumors." Elena turned to Jonathan, her voice raw. "Deny? Which means telling the world, I'm nothing." The room thickened with silence. Jonathan's jaw tightened, his eyes torn. "Eleanor, you're going to choose the company, choose power, aren't you?" Her voice broke. "So everything you said at the hospital, was that just comfort?" He touched her shoulder, his gaze aching. "I won't deny you. But if I go public, Hunter will attack harder. He'll destroy everything. I can't let you and the baby be hurt." Elena shook her head, tears spilling. "You don't understand. Silence is the weapon that kills me." That night, she sat alone on the balcony. Rain misted down, city lights flickering faintly across the lake's surface. She replayed every sneer from Victoria, every headline, every disdainful glance. She had hoped Jonathan would be her shelter, but could love survive when the world turned against them? And he still wavered between love and power. Eleanor placed a hand on her belly, whispering, "My child, I have to be strong. I'll protect you whether I'm by his side or not." Meanwhile, Hunter Brooks sat in his gleaming office in the city, a smirk twisting his lips. Jonathan Kane thinks he's untouchable, but one crack and his empire crumbles. He poured himself a glass of wine, eyes fixed on the screen displaying the photo of Jonathan holding Elena at the gala. "Wait, Kane. That girl will be the dagger that brings you to your knees." The news spread like wildfire, fanned by the wind. Tabloids screamed bloody headlines. Kane Global heir trapped in love scam, secret child exposed. Elena Marquez, from poor student to billionaire's bride. TV networks ran breaking reports, while social media swarmed with tens of thousands of comments, suspicion, mockery, contempt. Elena felt like standing in a public square at the lake house. Every time she opened her phone, venomous words struck her like knives. She must have planned it carefully to trap Jonathan. His company will collapse because of one gold digger. Each line carved into her skin. In Manhattan, Kane Global's skyscraper was surrounded by reporters. When Jonathan stepped out of his car, camera flashes fired like gunshots. He strode straight to the 40th floor, where the board of directors awaited. The air inside was thick with storm. The first to speak was Charles Reynolds, the eldest shareholder, hair white as snow, voice shaking with outrage. "Jonathan, the company's lost nearly $2 billion in market value in just 2 days. Rumors about that girl are dragging us into ruin. We need you to end this immediately." Another shareholder cut in, harsh and impatient. "Publicly deny it. Pay her off. End it clean. The longer this drags, the more we bleed." Jonathan sat unmoving, eyes cold, voice steady and sharp. "I will not deny her. Elena is not someone you can silence with money." The room erupted with angry whispers. Reynolds slammed his palm on the table, face flushed. "You would put your feelings above the empire your father built? You'd bury Kane Global for a poor girl?" Jonathan rose slowly, each word like a blade. "I once put the company above everything, and I lost myself. This time, I will not repeat that mistake." Silence fell. Everyone understood in that heavy quiet. A new era had begun, perhaps the end of Jonathan Kane's untouchable reign. That night, Jonathan returned to the lake house. Elena sat by the window, arms around her belly, her eyes empty. At the sound of his steps, she whispered, voice hoarse, "You chose the company again, didn't you?" Jonathan knelt before her. "No, I chose you." She blinked, startled. Jonathan laid his hand over her stomach, his gaze burning with rare determination. "Tomorrow, we'll stand before the world together. No hiding, no lies. I want everyone to know you are the woman I love, the mother of my child. No matter the cost." Elena recoiled slightly, trembling. "But you'll lose everything." Jonathan smiled faintly, a smile stripped of calculation. "I'll only lose what doesn't matter anymore." The next morning, the Plaza Hotel was flooded with reporters. The press conference filled the grand hall, cameras flashing in a storm of light. Elena wore a simple blue dress. Her pregnancy could no longer be concealed. As she walked in beside Jonathan, the room fell silent, every eye drawn to them. Jonathan took the podium, his gaze sweeping the room. His voice carried clearly, "Some claim Elena Marquez is a gold digger, that she used me to climb. I stand here to say, all of it is a lie." He paused, inhaled deeply. "Elena gave me a reason to live again, to believe I could love and be loved. She doesn't need my money. I begged her to stay." Gasps rippled. A reporter shot up, microphone raised. "Do you confirm the child is yours?" Jonathan faced the cameras, unwavering. "Yes, and I am proud of it." Elena stepped forward, taking his hand. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. "I have nothing but the truth. I love Jonathan, not the name, not the fortune. I love the man who wept by a hospital bed, terrified of losing his child." The room buzzed. And then, the rear doors opened. Hunter Brooks, he strode in, confidence dripping from every step, smile sharp as a blade. "Touching scene," he sneered. "But the world doesn't run on love. Jonathan, you're burying your father's empire for a poor girl." Jonathan didn't flinch. "If saving my family costs the company, so be it." Hunter laughed, the sound echoing through the hall. "You'll lose everything, and I'll be there to pick up the pieces." Elena's grip on Jonathan tightened. Jonathan descended the podium, stopping face to face with Hunter. His eyes burned, like forged steel. In front of live cameras, he spoke each word with clarity. "You're wrong. I'm not losing anything. I've found what money can never buy. A family." The hall erupted. Some journalists who had come expecting collapse now applauded. They had witnessed the impossible. Jonathan Kane, the notorious Ice King, choosing love over power. Back at the lake house that night, Elena curled in his arms, listening to his heartbeat loud and fierce, like war drums. "You don't regret it," she whispered. "Never." Jonathan held her tighter. "For the first time in my life, I feel free." Outside, the media raged. Stocks slid further. But in that small house, they found fragile peace. Jonathan rested his hand over her belly, voice resolute. "Tomorrow, we'll face more battles. But I swear, no matter if the world turns against us, I'll be here, with you, with our child." Elena closed her eyes, tears wetting the pillow not of bitterness, but of a new belief. For the first time, she truly believed love could be a weapon strong enough to stand against an empire. The media storm after the press conference did not die down. Some papers mocked Jonathan as a love-blind fool, while others praised his courage. Kane Global's stock continued to fall, and Hunter Brooks made constant television appearances, styling himself as the protector of shareholders and hinting that he was the rightful choice to lead the company into the future. At the lake house, Elena rarely stepped outside. Each time she opened her phone, venomous comments and edited clips assaulted her, turning their love into a public farce. But strangely, she no longer trembled. She remembered Jonathan's words at the press conference, "I have found what money can never buy, a family." That sentence became her shield against the storm. One evening, Jonathan returned from a closed-door meeting with his legal team. His eyes were tired but burning. "Hunter has gone too far," he said, tearing off his tie and striding to Elena. "He's not just attacking the company. He wants to destroy your honor and our child's. I won't let him." Elena met his gaze, her own firm. "Then we fight back. But it can't just be you. If needed, I'll step forward too. I'll speak in my own voice." Jonathan stiffened. "I don't want you to suffer more." "I've suffered enough," Elena said, steady. "This time, we fight together." He looked at her for a long moment, and in her eyes, he no longer saw the desperate girl who had signed that fateful contract, but a mother and a partner, ready to face the world for their family. He nodded. "Then we counterattack." The plan began with a series of secret meetings. Rachel Kim connected them with independent journalists who refused to sell their integrity to Hunter. They agreed to hear the truth directly from Jonathan and Elena. Meanwhile, the lawyers dug into Brooks Corporation's records, combing through every shadowy deal Hunter had left behind. One midnight, as Elena was writing a journal entry for the baby in Jonathan's mother's notebook, Rachel rushed in, laptop in hand. "We found it. Hunter has offshore funds in the Cayman Islands, such as hidden accounts and money laundering. If this comes to light, he's finished." Jonathan stepped closer, eyes flashing with steel. "Good, but we won't get our hands dirty like him. We'll let the truth speak, and the public will judge." The next day, Jonathan and Elena appeared in a live television interview not in a grand hotel, but in the modest living room of the lake house. The camera captured a simple scene. Elena is seated in an armchair, hand over her belly. Jonathan is beside her, with no suit jacket and only a white shirt. They spoke of the hospital nights, the fear of losing the baby, the unexpected love that had grown in pain. Elena looked into the camera, her voice calm but firm. "They can call me anything, gold digger, opportunist, I can take it. But when I place my hand on my belly, I know I don't need to prove myself to anyone. This baby is proof that our love is real." Jonathan continued, voice resolute. "And Hunter Brooks, who spins lies, doesn't care about truth or shareholders. He only wants power. But I believe justice will speak." The interview went viral. Viewers who had doubted began to shift. They saw a different Jonathan Kane, not the infamous Ice King, but a man willing to drop his armor to protect his family. Days later, the lawyers officially filed charges against Hunter with the Securities Commission, including evidence of money laundering and fraud. The media pivoted sharply. Headlines screamed, "Hunter Brooks, under investigation. Fraud, lies, and hidden accounts exposed." Hunter exploded. In a rushed interview, he shouted, "Jonathan Kane is fabricating everything to cover the truth. He wants to make me the scapegoat." But his frantic tone only fueled the backlash. People now saw him as what he was, a man undone by greed. That night, Jonathan sat on the porch, staring at the dark lake. Elena draped a shawl over her shoulders and joined him. He sighed. "I used to think my only battles were in boardrooms, with numbers and contracts. But you've shown me the real fight is in the heart. I'm not afraid of Hunter anymore. I'm only afraid of losing you." Elena rested her head on his shoulder, smiling through her tears. "You won't lose me. We still have to show our child a better world, and we'll do it together." A cold wind swept over the lake, yet they both felt a blaze between them, the fire of love, defiance, and faith that truth and courage could defeat any empire. The counterattack had begun, and this time, they weren't alone. Around them, voices of support rose. Ordinary people, families wronged by injustice, those silenced by power. They looked to Jonathan and Elena as proof that love and justice could still take root and bloom, even in the coldest world. The fire was lit, and nothing could extinguish it. Hunter Brooks did not fall easily. When the Securities Commission began its investigation, he unleashed his most vicious counterstrike, a doctored video. In it, Elena appeared in Jonathan's office months earlier, the day she signed the contract. The audio had been spliced, twisted into a cold transaction, a woman selling her body for money to save her mother. Overnight, the clip spread across every corner of the internet. Headlines blazed in red. The truth revealed: Elena Marquez, billion-dollar contract exposed. TV anchors replayed it endlessly, smirking as they asked, love or a well-rehearsed act? Elena froze when she saw it. The baby inside her kicked hard, reacting to her racing heartbeat. She sank to the floor, tears streaming. All their strength and courage seemed consumed in the fire of slander. Jonathan's fury shattered a glass in his hand. He's burning down the world just to destroy us. I swear, Hunter will pay. But Elena only shook, whispering, people will believe him. They always choose the uglier story. The next day, dozens of reporters swarmed outside the lake house. They screamed questions like hunters circling prey. Elena, did you sell yourself? Jonathan, did you buy her love? Cameras flashed. Voices roared. Elena clutched her stomach, her breath ragged. Jonathan shielded her, dragging her inside. But as the door shut, she collapsed to the floor, her hand slick with blood. No, no, Jonathan's voice broke as he caught her. He shouted for Rachel and carried Elena in his arms. Sirens wailed as the ambulance tore through the storm. At the hospital, white lights glared. Doctors rushed her into emergency care. Jonathan was barred from the outside. His chest felt crushed in an iron vice. He pounded the wall, knuckles bleeding, but felt no pain. Only one thought roared through his skull. I cannot lose her. I cannot lose them both. In that moment, power, wealth, reputation, all turned to ash. 2 hours later, the door opened. Dr. Greenberg stepped out, face grave but voice steady. They're both stable. But her condition is fragile. She must have absolute rest, no media, no stress. One more shock, and the risk of preterm birth is high. Jonathan nearly collapsed with relief. He rushed inside. Elena lay pale, eyes closed. He clasped her hand. Her lashes fluttered. The baby? Her voice was a whisper. Alive. Jonathan's voice cracked, his hands trembling. Both of you are safe. I'm sorry, Elena. I should have protected you better. She opened her eyes, tears glistening. Don't apologize. Just don't give up. Jonathan pressed his forehead to her hand. At last, he understood. This battle was never about saving a company or defending his pride. It was about saving the lives that had become his breath. The next morning, Jonathan stood before the press. He wasn't in a tailored suit, but a wrinkled white shirt. His voice was hoarse, but unwavering. Hunter Brooks fabricated lies. But no edited video can erase this truth. Elena Marquez is the mother of my child. She is the woman I love. And if anyone wishes to harm her, they'll have to go through me. His eyes burned as he continued. As for Hunter, our lawyers have submitted full evidence of his fraud and money laundering. He hasn't only attacked my family, he has betrayed every shareholder, every citizen. Justice will not spare him. The declaration struck like a bomb. The next day, FBI agents stormed Brooks Corporation. Cameras rolled as Hunter was dragged out in handcuffs, raging and cursing at Jonathan. His eyes brimmed with hate, but he was nothing more than ashes of a defeated man. At the hospital, Elena watched the broadcast on a small screen. When Hunter appeared in cuffs, she exhaled, tears of relief streaming. Jonathan entered, sat beside her, and held her hand. See? We don't need to run anymore. She leaned against his shoulder, whispering, we still have each other. That's the true rebirth. He wrapped his arm around her, his hand resting over the fragile life inside her. Outside, Dawn broke. Pale gold spilled through the window, filling the room with light. A reminder, after ashes, there is always rebirth. Spring returned to Chicago after months of storms. The snow melted, revealing cracked sidewalks where wildflowers pushed stubbornly through the stone. A city once cloaked in cold now shimmered in sunlight, and life began anew on a small street in Pilsen. Elena unlocked the door to her newly rented art studio. The walls were faded, the windows cracked, the floorboards worn, but to her, it was beautiful. On wooden shelves sat boxes of paint and brushes, unfinished canvases leaning in the corners. Neighborhood children came every afternoon, chalking messy drawings on the sidewalk, their laughter filling the air like hymns of freedom. Jonathan often sat in the corner, cradling their daughter. They named her Hope, a testament to everything they had survived. Once, he had held the world in his hands. Now, a single glance from the baby's eyes was enough to flood him with meaning. Sleepless nights, clumsy diaper changes, each became a ritual of redemption for a man who had once believed he was unworthy of happiness. Elena watched him often, smiling quietly. She knew Jonathan had changed. The man who once spoke only through contracts was now a gentle father, a patient husband. Sometimes, when Hope slept in her cradle, he would sit on the floor beside Elena, listening as she talked about her paintings, colors, and the simple life he had never noticed before. News of Hunter Brooks faded quickly after his fraud and money laundering conviction. Society, as always, moved on to fresher scandals. But for Jonathan and Elena, the silence was a gift. Cameras no longer hounded them. They could stroll by the lake in the mornings, sit in small cafes without whispers trailing behind them. One day, Jonathan announced the creation of the Marquez Kane Hope Foundation to help patients who couldn't afford medical care. Before the cameras, he spoke. No one should have to sell their soul to save someone they love. If I once walked that road, I cannot let others do the same. The word spread, and people began to see him differently. No longer just the ice king of the magnificent mile, but a man scarred by loss, who had learned to feel and love. Their wedding was held at the Drake Hotel, the same place that once staged a gala of scorn and whispers. This time, the hall glowed not with diamonds or gowns, but with the warmth of those who came to bless them truly. Rachel Kim, no longer the distant assistant but a dear friend, adjusted Elena's veil. Daniel Kane, Jonathan's younger brother, long estranged, returned at last, clasping his brother's hand. "It's time you stop punishing yourself," he whispered. When Jonathan and Elena stepped onto the balcony, the city of Chicago blazed beneath the setting Sunday. Hope, in their arms, stretched her tiny hands toward the sky. The golden light caught her hair, like a flame heralding the future. Elena turned to Jonathan, whispering, "I once thought my life would be nothing but darkness, but because of you, I've learned that light can be born even in darkness." Jonathan clasped her hand tightly. "No, because you taught me that love isn't weakness, it's the greatest strength." The church bells tolled, long and bright, mingling with applause, cheers, and tears of joy. In that moment, everything they had lost, everything they had endured, turned to dust. All that remained was the present, a family, a love, a child named Hope, and in the eternal dawn, they knew the road ahead would not be easy. But this time, they would walk it together.